in Tim Albright, one of our favorite humans from AV Nation, to kind of talk through live event production and how you can continue to level up your game. Because event prop friends, we know more about switchers, microphones, cameras, green screens, other stuff that name I still can't pronounce it, and Luke Jordan laughs at me. But you know what? We're gonna be okay because Tim and AV Nation and the AV Tweeps are gonna help us. Tim, welcome.
Thank you. And if Luke Jordan is laughing at you, then we need to do something about that.
Well, he keeps telling me all these great stories of Avixa and how he's going to steal me bottles of liquor. So I figure like it's coming, we're going to figure it out. But Tim, for those who haven't joined one of our webinars where we featured you or caught you on one of your multitudes of podcasts, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to join us today.
So my name is Tim. We started AV Nation 10 years ago. Before that, I was in broadcasting. I fell into the AV industry and just kind of fell in love with it. And so I married kind of my two careers together, broadcasting and AV. And we've covered the industry. We try to do it in an agnostic way. But along the way, we've helped other people that oh, hey, I have an idea. Well, here's how we podcast, right? This is what we do. We don't make any secrets about what we do. The technology we use is a lot of stuff that folks use on a daily and weekly basis. So I'm a big fan of getting, helping people out and making sure that we're all successful. As far as AV Nation is now part of an integrator, Conference Technologies out of St. Louis. And so I help a really great team marketing and that for that team. And, that's kind of where we're at. We sit in some interesting corners of the industry. And I'm joining you because you asked me, and I don't say no to you. So.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, I mean, for our event friends, because, what's been one of the best things about our friendship, which is crazy, because when Tim and I first met, it was literally, I think, one of the very last events many of us attended. We were there in Las Colinas at the Four Seasons. We were there for an AV event, but I have learned this whole new vocabulary, even before the pandemic, kind of talking about the way the manufacturers, of which I kind of knew what it was, because like Shure, Rode, kind of a lot of the big players in the industry, Sony, but like integrator, you use that word. What exactly is an integrator, and why does it matter to the events people?
Yeah, it's unfortunately, it's one of those words that in probably in every industry, there are these words that we all use kind of internally, right? And we expect those that are not in the industry to understand that when we say it. It's you can use the word dealer, you can use the word I almost said integrator again, but these are the folks, these are the smarts and parts that help you take your idea and you're looking for an end result, right? You're looking for a fantastic event. You're looking for seamless and flawless lights and sound and making the people attending your events feel something, right, in their soul, right? You want them to come away with something. We're the company that helps you do that, right? We're the ones who bring in the speakers, who bring in the projectors, who bring in the sound, who have the text, and have the smarts to help you really kind of pull off something remarkable. And so whether you're purchasing equipment, you need help with assessing a room, right? Well, this room has, I don't know, a Barco 3-gun projector from 1979. Probably don't want to use that, right? So, and just for the record, those are the size of Yugos, so they're very, very obvious. But we help you, right, kind of pull off the end result. And we're there along the way, whether you need us for the consulting and assessing, or helping you design a system, or helping you design an event from the tech side, or just bringing all the gear in and saying, let us do it for you.
So one of the things I think is fascinating about that, because as an event manager, especially if you've been focused primarily on just totally the front house, there really is a lot of distinctions where some of us had a foot backstage and out front, where we were kind of managing a lot of the different pieces, but many of us were never really introduced to the back of house crew that was helping kind of make the lights, music, camera, action happen on stage. And so the role of the integrator in particular has been one that, you know, as we've kind of built our own studios at home, as we've kind of pulled in and made it a part of our world, I think we're seeing more and more of those integrators blurring again those lines of conversations around it. And so when you look at it for the next 6, 12, 18 months, I don't think live event production is going to change. I still think we're going to have these weird blurry lines, and in some ways we're not going back. So where do you think live event production is headed? And how can we best prepare from your perspective as an integrator, but also just to use really simple, small, followable words for us event managers who need the clear direction?
Yeah. So I'm going to use, I don't know if this is a phrasing or, I'm going to try to say this, and I've kind of thought about this. A year ago, 2 years ago, right? Because a year ago, you're right, you and I just met, and then we all kind of sat down and had Negronis at our house together for a year. 2 years ago, when you were creating an event and an experience, it was just for those people there, right? The sound and the lights and the order of events, it was just for those people that were in that room. And that was by design. So you could do certain things from an artistic standpoint and from a light and sound and haze and you know, the pipe and drape standpoint. You could create these elements and these illusions. The next 12 months, you have to consider the audience at home. Yes, we are starting to get back, right? And depending on where you are in the country or in the world, the events are going to start coming back, and small, larger and larger groups are going to come together. And so you certainly have to design your events for those people in that room, but you also have to do it for the people who aren't. And that takes a different skill set, right? And it takes a different design. Yes, obviously, we're talking about cameras. Yes, obviously, we're talking about high-speed internet. I'm not trying to be silly here, but that is part of what we're talking about here. But we're also talking about the aesthetics of the room. We're talking about the lighting, right? We're talking about making sure that the sound, it can translate, and the music that you're using can translate down the pipe and being squished by the Googles and then spit out, on whatever device they're streaming on. So that is one element I think that we're going to have to, as an industry, and in conjunction with each other, right? We're going to have to work together, because you have an idea of what you want people to come away with, right? You want them to come away with some sort of feeling or an idea or a call to action. And we're going to have to help you get there. But we're going to have to help both audiences get there with the same, with using the same stage.
So I think that's a really interesting perspective, because, we were facilitating at Untethered, which is Hub's kind of mini design hack before their fall event. And I was in the event marketing room, and one of the things that consistently came up, and there were like 40 people in there at one time, and I would say 90% of the room was like, we hate the word hybrid. The word hybrid is terrible and it's not going to go in. So based on what you just said, which is a fully kind of integrated, unified experience, but with really clear distinctions of at home, in person, weird blurry lines, do you think hybrid's the best way to describe this new event experience that we're running towards, or is it something else?
It's totally a hybrid. That's what it is. It is what it is. It's I'm terribly sorry. I'm a St. Louis. I'm a St. Louis Blues fan. I'm also a Chicago Bears fan. The Chicago Bears stink, by and large, right? They've never had a quality, high-performance quarterback in their history. And my kids will tell you that I don't use the word never very often. It is what it is, though, right? The Bears are not a quarterback-centric football team. It's not why you love them. You love them because they kick ass on the defensive side. That's a hybrid event. It is what it is, right? I don't want to put, dress it up too much. And that's okay. It's okay that it's a hybrid. And it's okay that, in a year, somebody is the first person, I don't know who it is, they may be listening or watching. There's going to be somebody that in the next year goes, you know what? This is either too important or too complicated or whatever. this cannot be streamed. This cannot be experienced remotely. This has got to be in person. And somebody's going to make that decision that, you know what, we've done hybrid for X amount of months, and this is not happening, right? This is 100% in person. I'm terribly sorry. And that'll be a wonderful day, right? But until then, yes, this is 100% hybrid.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's important because, you know, we keep talking to our friends at the enterprise, the corporate level, a lot of it, and the word of the day is conservative, conservative, conservative. You know, the really big corporations, no one wants to be first in line or first up against the wall, however you're looking at it, right? But, you know, I was just on an in-person site visit for an event at the end of July. Jenny McDevitt, who just joined us, she's planning an event in October. You know, I know Avixa, the user conference, you know, that's kind of like the annual association for our friends, all of the audiovisual. They're planning a big bash in Orlando. And what's the average attendance of that show?
So, a year and a half ago, the last time they held that in North America, it was in Orlando again. They bounced between Orlando and Vegas. That they had attendance of about 40,000 people. Okay. Now, there are two schools of thought, and nobody is going down the middle here. There are people that are just, word on the street is like, it's either going to be the biggest infocom ever, right? Because there's so much pent up demand, not for the products. And I love my manufacturers, and do not misunderstand this. There ain't nobody standing in line to see another black box. That's just not happening. We are standing in line and waiting with bated breath to get back in person with each other so we can have a drink, so we can talk business, so we can communicate, we can connect on a personal level. You know, whether that is, this buddy or that buddy, see, Corey Schaefer, my friend from QSC, she is a 100% a in-person connect with people, type salesperson and business development person. It's either going to be the biggest one ever, or it's going to be the smallest one in 30 years. Right, because companies are not allowing their folks to travel. You look at both Google, Facebook, and Microsoft currently have a travel ban until the 1st of July. Okay,
and that's conservative. I mean, we're talking
that's
to
conservative.
Friends of ours that play in the same software place, and they were like, if we do July 2022. That feels more comfortable just from a liability and, oh dear Lord, what if something goes wrong, super spreader PR crisis.
And yet Microsoft and Google both are bringing their people back in by May, right? So that contrast does not make sense to me, right? So I understand, the travel and there was a higher risk in travel and all that jazz. But as we get more and more vaccines and more vaccinated, that's going to reduce, right? That risk is going to lessen. So Microsoft and Google are both bringing their folks back into the office in May and June, a full month and a half, 2 months before Facebook and Twitter are. So, and I know I'm using the big four kind of tech folks, but these
But I feel like it's a good litmus test for some of the same corporations because everybody's watching. I mean, Microsoft was one of the first ones to come down and saying, we are canceling everything. And then it was just a domino effect last mid-March. And now, again, I feel like we're all kind of paying attention, but now it's those rising from the smaller events that are like, our bottom lines, we can't do this. Our membership associations, we can't do this. Like, this is the lifeblood of why we exist, and it's killing us from a people and a profit perspective. And so how are we kind of mitigating that? To get to there, though we know there's liability issues at hand.
Yeah, there is. And so there are a number of shows happening as of right now, and obviously we're in the middle of April here. But residential side of the AV world is an organization called CEDIA, and they have their annual event. And thankfully for them, it's typically happened in the fall, right? It is, as of right now, it's still taking place in person in Indianapolis, the 1st of September. NAB. They were moving their annual show to the fall. Again, that's Vegas, 1st of October. right? You mentioned Avixa. Avixa moved to Infocom, which is their annual commercial AV show, to the end of October. I honestly don't think I'm going to see my wife and kids come the 1st of September until maybe Christmas time, right? I might be that guy driving home on Christmas Eve.
Be on the same trade show plan
Yeah.
rolling through there. I was looking at my calendar and I was like, if this happens, it really will feel like, 2019 versus the 2020, which
all within like 2 months of each other, right?
Because everyone's like, we got to do it before November, but not for the normal reason of before November. Like, because what if the 17th wave hits at that point in time? Yeah. Bless their hearts. Well, let's bring it back around because I know, but I blushed you. I'm sorry.
I love that. Right?
So talk to me a little bit around about, how is production fitting into the world of hybrid? We've talked about it, but let's talk big picture around staffing, budget. Those two issues before we even get into how are we actually going to do the thing once we plan the thing. I know when I was on site, both at the last 2 site visits, the AV team was there, but there weren't a lot of them. And traditionally, most venues don't keep a full AV crew. They're all 1099ers. It's a gig economy out there. So talk to me about staffing, talk to me about budget, and am I going to just have to cross my fingers and pray for the best?
Get yourself a partner that you trust. Let's start there, right? And I'll explain why in a second. I don't have to tell you this, but just to have it said out loud, the live events industry was gutted last year. Absolutely gutted, right?
Yeah.
It's almost I don't want to use the buggy whip, manufacturers from 100 years ago, but it was almost like, y'all are out of business at least for the next 12 months. And they were, right? The vast majority. There was a number of folks who really talented and they leveraged their talents for the virtuals and doing productions and stuff like that. But by and large, that industry was gutted. And you had thousands of these professionals who, you're right, they're gig, right? They work this job and they go to the next one. They live like this, right? This is, they live job to job. A lot of them did have savings. Some of them didn't, though. And you're looking at kind of, you're sitting here as a 25-year-old, woman who's like, I am a sound engineer and I do this and I don't, I'm just getting started in this industry, or you're a 45-year-old guy who's got 2 kids that he has to feed, right? Along with his wife. These people had to live last year, right? They had to eat, they had to pay their bills, and there was no jobs. And so there's a big portion of that talent that is no longer available, and that's an issue. Now, the companies that either retained their top talent, good on them, right, for finding them stuff to do, and finding them work. And those of you who are gig workers in the live events, good on you for having a savings, and hopefully you're still able to come around. But there is a good chunk of that talent pool that is no longer there, and we have to address that and acknowledge that. What that means is you have talented folks on the high end who were prepared for a down year, right? They're expensive because they've been around forever and a day, right? And then you've got the folks who are green and are going to come back in, or are just starting out. They're not as expensive, but they're also not as experienced, right? So there's a balance here. That's why I say find yourself a partner that you trust that can create that mix with enough seasoned but not too much that you're going to pay out the nose, and enough green but not too much because you don't have the experience to give you a good quality production, and mix the two, and you have a good producer, right? A good tech event producer to kind of manage the production. I think you've got a good solution there. But it all starts with kind of that person, almost like the tech version of you, right? Is what you're looking for, and that person that kind of bring everybody together.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because there's the big players out there, right? There's the PSAVs, which is the Encores, which it kind of, they goes by both. There's the Freemans of the world. There's the GESs. There's the ones that, like, there's that one producer that you've had for a million years. Like for us, a lot of times, like mine's like Brant, and like just Brant Kruger, and like that's just who I call because he's really great. But for those last minute things, to your point, people like Brant are just like, there's like a backlog, right? And I pay for the experience, especially because I think that point you made about they're green or haven't gotten the experience. Not only did they not get the normal show experience of just like running a sound engineer, an audio engineer, the iMag camera, calling the show, the normal roles you would pay, back a house, this whole world that we're entering into in hybrid, like that's something where now if the feed goes down and there's something happening on stage and we're porting it in, like it's almost like when the Grammys are happening and you've got 52 screens and you're like, okay, this is gonna be great, but who's on first and who's going live and who's in charge of this circus? So to me, like that executive producer, that technical director, they were already like critically important to survival, but now it's like, please don't leave me. I think you're pretty, I have all the money, and if I don't, I'm gonna go and find it for you. So let's start there. Where do you find these people? Because there's a lot of gig places like Soundings Connect, Happily. You're going online and you're like, but is this person really good? There's no reviews. And like, it's kind of hit and miss when you're asking the network because no one wants to tell you or introduce you to their executive producer or technical director because they're ours. You can't have them. So where do we find these humans? How do we find and vet these partners when our normal space is not available to us?
Well, first of all, you need to share. And I somewhat say that jokingly, but not really. I mean, this is, I am a big fan of we can all win together, right?
Yeah.
And that's just my personality in general. And you look for them, right? You ask your quite frankly, you ask your clients, what events have they had, what companies or what events have they gone to that are really great from their experience or from their perspective. But also reach out, right? I would start personally with commercial integrators, right? Because a lot of them do have live events arms, right? Conference Technologies is one of them.
Name for us like your top 5, 6 commercial integrators, so that there's like, we defined integrator earlier in the show, but like what's a commercial, like who is a commercial integrator we should check into?
So obviously my boss, like the company I work for is Conference Technologies. They're in 26 locations, right? So conferencetech.com is their website, and they can service, pretty much, a live event in there. You also have AVI Systems, again, multiple locations. Diversified. I don't know that Diversified has a live event section, but I don't know that they don't. So again, multiple locations, and these are companies that are, the top tier, live events folks, throughout the country. AVI SPL is the biggest, AV integrator in the world, just by sheer, revenue. And find that out from SCN, System Contractor News. So these are folks that, you would look up their name, you would look up their reviews, you would look, ask folks, who has worked for them, first of all, and also worked with them, right? Finding somebody that has done a gig with another company is incredibly eye-opening and revealing to see how they do, not only how they do work, but also how they treat their people and how they treat, others.
I like that. And so as you're getting into it, like, so what are the kinds of questions we should be asking these partners? How do we make sure they're walking their talk?
They certainly look for certifications, right? You look for memberships in certain groups. Alexa is one of them, but certainly, if you are in a union town, IATSE is another one. It again depends on where you're at and whether or not the union is important. I'm not going to comment one way or the other on that. But I live in St. Louis, dude. It is a union town, and you work with the situation you're at. So I have no pros or cons on unions, but it is what it is. And so IATSE is another one. that you might want to take a look at. And then, start asking questions about, how do you do, streaming? What is your backup plan? I know one of the things that our the CTI team has been working on from the live event standpoint is a backup for internet, right? What is their backup plan if the stream goes down? If the house network goes down, what is your backup plan? And start looking for, if they've done live streams in the last year, they're at least worth talking to. Get copies of those, right? What did those look like? What was the quality of those? And then, quite frankly, it comes down to the relationships that they have and talking with those folks. Because especially without them there, right? This is not something where here's my buddy, Tom, and he does great work. Okay, now go away, Tom. But it's finding those folks that that'll give you their real 2 cents on how they are to work with, right?
And I like that. So seeking the social proof, looking for the certifications. A lot of the executive producers and TDs we've seen, like they've set up Vimeo sites, right? So you can sit there and just watch the shows. Asking for references never hurts. And I mean, I don't think we should. The union there is a great point, because they will pretty much tell you the truth, because we're all kind of in this together, because their business took a hit just as much as ours did in some ways, because the crews are out of work, and you can't put a right to work if there's no one there inside the building. I know that red lights campaign that's been running around, where it's like first one out, last one in, because when we talk about, it's not even just meetings and events, right? When it's festivals, when it's the state fair, when it's concerts, when it's Broadway, the NBA's been making it work with pods, but all of these are events. And just the sheer logistics it takes to do all of that and run that, like having someone who comes with the street cred is, I think, a great option. So talk to me about money for a second. And of course, to be, compliant with our friends of the antitrust rules, you don't have to be like, it should cost you X hundred of dollars. But like, what's a reasonable price per hour? What's a good day rate? What's it look like if I want to run a 3-day show and I'm looking for an executive producer, a TD, a master of all things, or a mistress of all things? Hourly rate, day rate, big buckets of time and planning.
So hourly rate, it depends on the city. And I know that I hate it depends. So you're looking between $100 to $250 an hour, right? And the reason I say it depends on the city is because it goes back to 2 different things. First of all, cost of living, right? The same show I do in St. Louis is going to cost me a whole heck of a lot more in LA, bottom line, right? Cost of living, cost of renting the space, the cost of living in that city. Second is what we already talked about, and that's the unions, right? If you have a union shop, if you have a union venue, then you have to buy union labor. Union labor does cost more. It just does. Again, not a statement, not a judgment. It is what it is, right? It's hybrid. So that's where you start, and then for a day rate. Well, what's $100 times 8? It's $800. Well, you're probably going to get some sort of discount on that, so $700 for a day rate on that, up to about $2,000 per tech, right? And for somebody who is the executive producer on that, you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $4,000 a day. That's the person who oversees everything. And they're worth every penny, quite frankly. I have a lot of respect for those people. I do not want to do what they do. I will pay them all the money. Like you said, I have the money, and if I don't, I'll find it for you, because you are absolutely worth every single dime. One thing I do want to point out, and this actually goes to, you're going to find increases on premiums on certain people. Also look for certifications for safety, right? So These are people who can work in cherry pickers. These are people who can go and run scaffolding. These are people who can run load stars. They're certified to safely fly speakers. They're certified to safely hang lights. And that's a critical point, right? Is to make sure that you're paying for and getting those safe individuals, because the last thing you need is for somebody to get injured or worse on your show.
Well, no, and I think, again, going back to that, it's a hybrid show, because now you're planning 2 separate entities where you have the game plan for the in-person, and you've got to fly the lights, the speakers, everything that comes and makes that beautiful in-house stage experience. And then you've got this beautiful in-house experience there. And I know for some shows we've been discussing, depending on size, like it's almost 2 executive producers that form the dream team for it, because really splitting that focus, like it was already a big bite to pull out, to come in and just produce one show, especially when you're talking multiple breakout rooms, a lot of really big names, a heavy main stage. I mean, just a lot of those moving pieces to get the cut and move the flow. And now you're like, let's do it twice on a 24-hour clock, so our friends from LATAM and APAC and everyone else can come to the party, which, yes, we absolutely want to do, because international travel is probably not going to be a thing for like a year or so, though we are going to get to Barcelona, my friend. It's going to be amazing. But until that day, like, you know, even if you paid them $3,000 a day, there's a lot of executive producers I know that are like, you know, we need to bring a friend. It's not just one crew you're hiring, it's 2, and we do different things. And so really justifying who they are, what they do, who's a backup, what happens if someone gets sick, what happens if someone gets COVID, like the quarantine issues, you know, like there's all of these things that meeting safely takes on multiple connotations. And so I love that you brought that out, because meeting safely was always a concern. You know, that was not like this brand new thing now that there was a pandemic and a global disease. No,
you just have another layer of it, right? And I do want to point one thing out, because I have a dear friend who just did a more than 24-hour event. It was she started in APAC and did 3 separate time zones. When you are talking and you're creating content for those folks, make sure that number one, you've got regional differences. You have you make sure that the people that are you're trying to connect with them, and this is they had a lot of vendors that were regional. Make sure you have those vendors that are speaking and that are their local, at least regional people. I found it fascinating, because I was able to MC the event, and I spoke to manufacturers in Hong Kong, in Beijing, in Brisbane, in I forget the name of the town in India, but all these different folks, and obviously there's the folks here in North America and then parts of Europe, but it was personalized for their region, at least, right? It wasn't a Eurocentric show. It wasn't a American-centric show. It was a global show, but that took effort, and that took work to do it, purposefully.
No, and I think that you bring up another good point there, like that regional difference. We were talking to a friend who, they have lots of clients from a global perspective, and so it's like not only having a regional approach, but having it being done in the different languages. Like if you're going to have it happen in APAC, have an MC who speaks whatever the native tongue is of the primary viewers on there. Have the accessibility issues so that you're providing those translations in a way that's coming through and it's vetting. I mean, that's been something, and leads me into kind of my next question of like, what's your favorite software, hardware, platforms, because everybody's got like 12 we've got in our back pockets. It's taking us like 6 today. Like in order to produce our show, we are using HubSpot, we are using Wirecast, we are using, what else do we have in play here? And Vimeo, right? So there are 3 things in play, plus the Clubhouse conversation and the Twitter stream. And I know for your events, y'all have lots. So tell me, like, what's the tech? What's the platform? Is there one ring to rule them all? And can we afford it?
No, there's not, because they all do different things, right? I use Brightco, which is my video server, and I like that because it's a competitor to Vimeo and to YouTube a little bit, not really, but more of a Vimeo. I can constrain the video stream to a URL, right? So if Nifty.com wanted to, if you and I wanted to do a video show, right, and we only wanted people that could see it on your website, right, well, then we can do that. So there are benefits to that. Now, you pay for that, right, and you pay for the access to that. I love Wirecast. I really, really do. I've gotten to where, it's fantastic, and the quality is incredible. But then you've got the ease of use of Zoom and Teams
Yeah.
and the virtual backgrounds that a lot of these don't have. We're trying out, not trying out, we were moving to a platform called Riverside, which Riverside allows you to record locally the audio and video. And you, when you're done with the recording, it then uploads to the server and then you can download it. But it's an uncompressed audio and video stream. Big fan of that. I'm not going to say cameras are cameras. Cameras are important, right? And microphones are important. My favorite is the one I'm talking to. It's a Shure SM70, SM58, SM7B rather, SM7B. But they've got a great new one that's USB, right? And it's called an MB7. The reason that USB part is important is because, well, this requires another piece of gear to get the audio into a computer, right? So there's another piece of gear. With the USB part on the MB7, it doesn't. It just plugs straight into your computer, right?
Yeah.
EV makes a great one as well. EV20 is I guess my second favorite microphone for stuff. I love Sony cameras. Marshall Electronics have got a incredible line of these little itty bitty cameras like this, like 1-inch square. Poly has a really impressive new. It's called a P15. It's a 4K camera. But again, you're gonna pay for these, right? I mean, the P15, which just came out, retails for about $800, but it's a 4K camera, right? And so to have that, and to have that experience, I think you've got to have the quality. I mean, anybody can go out and buy. You spend $20, $30 on a webcam, quote unquote, right? And you throw it on your computer, and yeah, you could do, and it'll have a built-in microphone. It won't be very good, but you'll be able to be heard, sort of,
Yeah. I mean, I remember that webinar we did together back in August or September of last year, and people were like, really, is the $300 microphone worth it? And we unplugged the $300 microphone to use the one inside the computer, and it was a high-end MacBook Pro. It's not like it was inexpensive, and like immediately you could just hear the bottom drop out, and like the whole audience was like, oh, right? And then we plugged in somebody's webcam for one of those really inexpensive mics, kind of the ones that are about the $60, $70 mic, and it improved, but like marginally, and that's being generous, because there was still a lot of static and it was this weird pitch. And then we plugged back in the $300 microphone, and it was like, oh, peace is restored in the hamlet. And that's my favorite thing. If you compare it to a pre-pandemic live event experience, you never noticed the microphones until the audio went bad, and then everybody noticed the microphones. It's here, but like turned up to 11. You can tell when the mic isn't working. You can tell when someone's not on a hard line. There are a lot of things there that it's immediately identifiable. If they've got a crappy camera or something like that, the feed's coming through. We were doing one where I think the feed was coming in from Ireland, and she just couldn't find a drop, and there was no way to get it through. And she spent half of the interview with her head being green. There was nothing we could do about it. It was just the way everything was kind of porting through the systems. And it was an amazing interview. We could hear her perfectly. She just kind of looked like the blob. So investing in that tech, and whether you as an event manager are carrying your own now, and we're gonna have Tim, kind of like we did last time, he's gonna fill us out a list. He's going to bring us some stuff so that we'll be sending it out. So if you're catching this on demand, you're watching it live, don't worry. We'll get you a list of all the tech he loves with the price points. Or you can check out his blog over at avnation.tv. There are lots of things where you're kind of going in search of like, here's the video cameras we suggest. Here's the lighting kits we suggest. Here are, every bits of pieces of information if you don't have that AV tweep, who is your personal and close friend, to come in to do it. So I think that's always something to kind of go in and keep the conversations going. So I wanted to do a quick time check, because I know we're coming up 2 minutes against the hour. Do you have a hard stop? I know we were running a little bit behind, but I've got like 3 more. You've got a hard stop. Oh, guys, we're gonna bring him back then. So I've got one last question for you then. What should we have asked you, AV person, that we didn't, that you wish every event manager knew going into new normal?
How long will this take? And what I mean by that is don't bring us in the day before you hit the site, right? Bring us when you did site surveys, I think this last week, right? invite 2 or 3 that you trust to those site surveys, right? The first time you go to a space, they should be going to a space, right? For 2 different reasons. First of all, it gives them vision, right? I'm not saying you have to hire all of them. Bring 2 of them at a time. I don't care. Let them hash it out, right? Let them compete for your business. That's great. But it gives them vision of, okay, this is happening in 2 months or 3 months. They can plan then staffing. They can plan equipment, all this other jazz. They can also budget, right?
And you
It
can
gives
budget.
them though, yeah. It also gives them the vision of it for their project management, but also it gives them the ability to honestly, quite frankly, to make your event better from the ground up.
I love that. You know, we are big fans of proactive versus reactive over here at Nifty Method. Tim, tell the folks where everyone they can find you. Where can they check you out to get all of these knowledge bombs online, on the Twitter, on the internet?
Don't follow me on the Twitters. I've been saying that for 10 years, so it works. You can go by LinkedIn, or you can just go by the website, avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv.
All right. Well, Tim, thank you so much. And thank you again to everyone who's tuned in. We're going to get him off. We're going to come back in. We're going to take a short break. We're going to head over to the GMID parking lot party, and we're going to catch up on what's been happening.